Hey, I'm Tad, the Associate Pastor here at Wilkesboro Baptist Church, and thank you for joining us for this recorded service online. If you would like more information about our service times where you could come join us in person, you can see those at wilkesborobaptist.org, or you can email us at info@wilkesborobaptist.org. We hope that you enjoy it. God bless.
Good morning. Welcome. Sorry, just trying to waken everybody up. It's great to see you guys' smiling faces today. Welcome to another great day. I am excited for our worship today. For those who don't know me, I am the middle school pastor. I'm Josh Pinkerton. Speaking of which, if you are a middle school student or high school student and you're interested in a ministry opportunity to serve the community, we're going to help set up for Faith Fest, and you'll get a free ticket out of it. So if you're a rising sixth grader, fifth going into sixth, all the way through 12th grade, come talk to me, or you can email me at jpinkerton@wilkesborobaptist.org to let me know. I'm going to turn in our final list tomorrow, so if you could let me know by today, that would be wonderful. If you're a visitor, please fill out our tear tab here in the bulletin. We're excited to see you guys. Thanks for being part of the church today. All right, if you would all please stand with me, we're going to read our verse going into worship. It's Ezekiel 34, verses 11 and 16, which says, "For thus says the Lord God, behold, I myself will search for my sheep and will seek them out. I will seek the lost, and I will bring back the strayed, and I will bind up the injured, and I will strengthen the weak, and the fat and the strong I will destroy. I will feed them in justice."
Amen. God has spoken through the reading of his word. Let us respond in song, a song of praise. Praise to the Lord. Sing it with us.
Praise to the Lord, the Almighty, the King of creation. Oh, my soul, praise him, for he is your help and salvation. Come all who hear, now to his temple draw near. Join me in glad adoration. Praise to the Lord above all things, so wondrously reigning. Shelters thee under his wings and so gently sustaining. Have you not seen all that is needful has been sent by his gracious ordaining? Praise to the Lord who will prosper your work and defend you. Surely his goodness and mercy shall daily attend you. Ponder anew what the Almighty can do, if with his love he befriends you.
Sing joyful, joyful.
Joyful, joyful, we adore thee, God of glory, Lord of love. Hearts unfold like clouds before thee, opening to the sun above.
Sing that again.
Joyful, joyful, we adore thee, God of glory, Lord of love. Hearts unfold like clouds before thee, opening to the sun above. Whoa, whoa. praise to the Lord. Let all that is in me adore Him. All that hath life and breath, come now with praises before Him. Let the Amen sound from His people again. Gladly forever adore Him.
Amen. Thank you for singing and worshiping with us this morning. Let's continue on into a time of confession, acknowledging our sinful condition in front of a holy God. This is Lord, have mercy for what we've done. Sing it with us.
For what we have done and left undone, we fall on your countless mercies. For sins that are known and those unknown, we call on your name so holy. For envy and pride, for closing our eyes, for scorning our very neighbor. In thought, word, and deed, we failed you, our King. How deeply we need a Savior.
Lord, have mercy.
Lord, have mercy. Christ, have mercy. Lord, have mercy on us. Lord, have mercy. Christ, have mercy. Lord, have mercy on us. For what you have done, your life of love, you perfectly lived, we praise you. Though tempted and tried, you fixed your eyes, you finished the work God gave you.
Here's the good news.
And there on the tree, the King among thieves, you bled for the world's betrayal. You loved to the end, our merciful friend. How pure and forever faithful. Lord, have mercy. Christ, have mercy. Lord, have mercy on us. Lord, have mercy. Christ, have mercy. Lord, have mercy on us. Lord, have mercy. Christ, have mercy. Lord, have mercy on us. Lord, have mercy. Christ, have mercy. Lord, have mercy on us.
Let this be our prayer.
For hearts that are cold, for seizing control, for scorning our very Maker. In thought, word, and deed, we failed you, our King. How deeply we need a Savior. Lord, have mercy. Christ, have mercy. Lord, have mercy on
Well, thank you for being here. I'm Tad Craig, the associate pastor. Be praying for Pastor Chris this week as he is on vacation with family, spending some much needed rest. So pray for him for safe travels. He'll be back next week. So it'll be a great time for him and his family to be away. We need to be praying for our prayer partner this week as well, which is Habitat for Humanity. I had an experience in college when I was serving at a church doing my undergrad where with Habitat for Humanity's help, we built a house in a week. It was a church where there was multiple contractors, general contractors that had all these crews, and there was a need in the community. A lady in the community needed a house very quickly, and so they took on this challenge. So on Monday, it started with just foundation, and by Friday and Saturday, it was a house that they could live in. It was a cool experience. It was good to get to know Habitat for Humanity. Now, granted, it wasn't completely done. There were some punch list items, but through this organization, it was able to help someone in need, someone that was having financial difficulty, that needed a place to stay, and that's what Habitat for Humanity does. There's a Restore that's right down the street. You can go and shop there. All the proceeds go to help Habitat for Humanity and help these people in financial stress for housing situations. Our unreached people group are the Benai people of India. When it says unreached, that means there's no one there ministering to them. They have theoretically never heard the gospel. They've never heard about Jesus. They've never heard anything about that. So when we say an unreached people group, that's literally what it means. A people group that has not been reached with the gospel. And our prayer is that somebody will go be with them, share God's word with them, and that they can come to know Christ and have that gospel experience. Our memory verse for August, it is August. We have a new one. It comes from Mark 10:15. Now, I'm not expecting you to memorize it today, okay? In fact, I'll read it and you can just listen today, but next week, Pastor Chris is going to be expecting you to memorize it, okay? He'll be expecting you to read it from memory. But it comes from Mark 10:15. It says this, "Truly I say to you, whoever does not receive the kingdom of God like a child shall not inherit it." And it's a very appropriate verse for my message today. You're going to hear a little bit about having a childlike faith. Let's go to the Lord in prayer. Father, thank you so much for your love, for your grace, for your mercy. We thank you for allowing us to come and lift up our voices in thanksgiving for the blessings you continue to put on us and the blessings you continue to give us. Help Habitat for Humanity as they work in this community, providing where there needs to be needs met. Give them discernment, give them wisdom, give them guidance. Be with the unreached people group of Benai in India. Send someone, a messenger, that can share the good news of your love and your grace and your mercy. We ask these things in your son's name. Amen.
Let's continue to stand and worship this morning. Tad's going to lead us in a wonderful sermon this morning about Zacchaeus, and I'm grateful for a Savior who is a friend of tax collectors and sinners like me and you. So let's sing What a Friend We Have in Jesus. What a friend we have in Jesus, all our sins and griefs to bear. What a privilege to carry everything to God in prayer. Oh, what peace we often forfeit. Oh, what needless pain we bear. All because we do not carry everything to God in prayer. Trials and temptations. Have we trials and temptations? Is there trouble anywhere? Jesus, Savior, is our refuge. Take it to the Lord in prayer. Are we weak and heavy laden? Comfort with the load of care. Jesus knows our every weakness.
to you in earnest prayer. Soon in glory bright unclouded, face to face will be our prayer. Joyful praise and endless worship will be our sweet portion there. Oh, what a friend. Oh, what a friend in Jesus. Oh, what a friend. Oh, what a friend in Jesus. Oh, what a friend we have 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 in Jesus.
It's good to hear you worshiping out there this morning. Let's sing a song of celebration. Let's sing Wherever I Go. We'll need a little help here as we get started.
All my life, all I know, God's been good, good to my soul. Mountain high, valley low, I'm gonna sing wherever I go. All my life, all I know, God's been good, good to my soul. Mountain high, valley low, I'm gonna sing wherever I go. God is for me, He's not against me. I will hold to the plans He has for me. When I'm broken, He will fix me. I will call on the name of the Lord. All my life, all I know, God's been good, good to my soul. Mountain high, valley low, I'm gonna sing wherever I go. He's my heart song in my sorrow. He's my hope and my strength for tomorrow. When the storms rise all around me, I will call on the name of the Lord. All my life, all I know, God's been good, good to my soul. Mountain high, valley low, I'm gonna sing wherever I go. All my life, all I know, God's been good, good to my soul. Mountain high, valley low, I'm gonna sing wherever I go. I got joy deep in my soul. And I will sing wherever I go. All my life, all I know, God's been good, good to my soul. Mountain high, valley low, I'm gonna sing wherever I go. Sing all my life, all I know, God's been good, good to my soul. Mountain high, valley low, I'm gonna sing wherever I go.
Amen. Thanks for joining us in joyful worship this morning.
I hope you've enjoyed this series that we've been in all summer called The Encounters of Jesus. We went through several different stories. The purpose, seeing people come and face to face with Jesus and be changed. Never going back the same. And we've looked at several different things. And Pastor Chris is going to finish this off in the month of August. We're going to start a new one, a new series next month. So I'm looking forward to it. The last week, pop quiz, if you were here, okay, we had an encounter with Jesus with a rich young ruler. Does this make sense? I'm trying to look for some head nods. I'm going to tell Chris that there were head nods so he'll know that you were paying attention. But it's an interesting story where there's a rich man and he walks away sad, right? He asked Jesus the simple question, how can I get eternal life? How can I enter into the kingdom of heaven eternally and live forever? And Jesus simply says, love the Lord your God with your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. And he says, well, I've been doing it my whole life. Is that going to get me in? And Jesus says, well, sell all your possessions. And he walks away sad. We leave that story kind of in a somber mood because Jesus then says it's easier for the camel to go through the eye of a needle than a rich man to enter heaven. It's kind of sad. But today we're going to see a story where Jesus just does that. He shows a situation where a rich man does enter the kingdom of heaven and follows Jesus, unlike the rich young ruler. So imagine with me for a moment, you're on your daily walk, okay? Some of us take daily walks because our doctor has told us to help with our health. Some of us take daily walks because we just like to walk around and look at nature. Maybe it's a wonderful morning. Maybe it's a beautiful evening. Maybe you need to walk the dog. Maybe you need to walk the kids. Any of that, right? You're just on a walk, casually, just minding your own business, and you come across a tree and you look up and there's a man in the tree. What are you saying? Why is he in the tree? Great question. Now you're looking and saying, okay, does he have any of the garb you would need to cut down a tree? Is there a harness? Is there a chainsaw? Is there, protective gear? Is there something going on? You're looking to that. No, it's just a regular man, regular clothes in a tree. Next question you're going to ask yourself is what chased him up the tree? You start looking around. Where's the dog, cat, mountain lion, bear, lion, whatever, jaguar. All of those things, you're looking around to see what's chased him up the tree. Now let's change the story just a little bit. You're walking along, and it's the richest man in town that's in the tree. That's asking, you got more questions now. Why is a rich man who can pay someone to go up in a tree? Does he know something we don't know? Is there an investment opportunity for us? Maybe he's looking at planting more trees or going to build another empire or whatever it is. Maybe there's something there we can invest in. Maybe obviously he's wealthy, so he knows what he's doing. We can't question that. Once again, what chased him up the tree could be a question. All right, we're going to change it even a further step. Now it's a well-known politician in the tree. Someone that is known in the community. Maybe it's the president of the United States. We'll go to that extreme. You're walking along, you look up, the president of the United States is just sitting in a tree. More questions are coming to mind. Why is a politician in a tree? Is this a marketing scheme? Is this a way for his campaign? Is it a way to boost himself? Why is going on? Once again, is there an adventure? Is there something else he's going to tax us on? Is there something he's going to do to improve our community? It's about time he did something to improve our community. Or the quite opposite, why is he in the tree? Is he going to take down more trees? Is he against trees now? Maybe he's against trees. This is a protest against trees. Lots of questions come to mind simply by seeing a grown man in a tree. These questions came to mind this past summer when I was at Castle. And the speaker was given a sermon, and it was all entitled, Worth It. And he spoke on this story, and as he was telling the story of Zacchaeus, I started asking these questions. Why is a man in a tree? It doesn't make sense, but it will today, because we're going to look at it. So turn with me to Luke chapter 19. We're going to see how we left one story of a rich man being sad and seeing another man be happy and encountering Jesus. Luke chapter 19. We're going to read verses 1 through 10. It says, Jesus entered Jericho and was passing through. A man was there by the name of Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector and was wealthy. He wanted to see who Jesus was, but being a short man, he could not because of the crowd. So he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore fig tree to see him, since Jesus was coming that way. When Jesus reached the spot, he looked up and said to him, Zacchaeus, come down immediately. I must stay at your house today. So he came down at once and welcomed him gladly. All the people saw this and began to mutter, he is gone to be the guest of a sinner. But Zacchaeus stood up and said to the Lord, look, Lord, here and now I give half of my possessions to the poor. And if I have cheated anybody out of anything, I will pay back 4 times the amount. Jesus said to him, today salvation has come to this house, because this man too is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek and to save what was lost. Now, we're familiar with this story. If you grew up Baptist or any kind of Baptist life, you sang this song, the Zacchaeus song. No, I'm not singing the song, Michelle. I sang one song in one sermon, and I was told I got the words wrong, so I'm not doing it again. But y'all know the song. Very similar story. But have you ever looked at it through the different characters and actually become part of the story? See, the first character we're going to look at is Zacchaeus. He's the first one we see. And it says, when Jesus entered Jericho and was passing through, a man was there by the name of Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector and was wealthy. So what we're going to see in Zacchaeus, we're going to see, we know that he's in Jericho, chief tax collector. We find out later he's physically unimpressive, short of stature, vertically challenged, any of those words could use. He's eagerness to see Jesus. We really don't know why. He overcame many obstacles to discover this man who he heard about, this Jesus he had heard about. And he risked safety, ridicule, and reputation by climbing a tree. Interesting character study, right? So let's break it down. The first thing we see is chief tax collector. Now, this phrase, this Greek phrase that says chief tax collector, is not in the Bible anywhere else. In fact, these Greek words are not found anywhere else in Greek literature. So it's a unique term that the writer is trying to give to Luke, or Luke is giving to Zacchaeus, to mean that he's not just a tax collector. Now, a tax collector in this time is someone, it would have been a Jewish nature, because the Roman government, they loved taxes. They would tax you for everything. No one understood what the taxes were for, but they taxed you. And you to live under Roman authority, you pay taxes. And Romans thought, well, a good way to kind of ease the blow of taking money from these poor people is let's employ people that are like them to take their money. They won't be as mad as their neighbor is taking their money. It's good logic. So as the tax collectors would come, they would set up shop, and Rome would give them a baseline of what they were supposed to take in. Anything they took in above that baseline was profit for them. So a tax collector was not well liked. It was a situation, once again, where government had all these rules that you couldn't read because you didn't read them, or you couldn't read, and they would tell you what to pay them. You didn't know what to pay them, they would tell you what to pay them, and you had to trust that it was the right amount. You didn't know? And it says that he was the chief of tax collectors. So one thing, he would cheat people out of that, but now he managed all the tax collectors in Jericho. Jericho was a famous city. Another song you've probably sang growing up, Joshua fought the Battle of Jericho. It's a big city in the Old Testament. It kept getting rebuilt and rebuilt and rebuilt, and it was stationed along the Jordan River, in fact, where all the kind of rivers come together in that area. So it was a great trade post. They had a huge market there. The Romans had set up a great place because they could tax whatever they wanted to. So imagine being the chief of all tax collectors, all of the opportunities you had to gain wealth. You had the baseline that you paid, you taxed everybody on, and then you could tax on import items, export items, personal items, things you buy, things you sell. The wealth was enormous. And that's what I think we're trying to get at, is we're trying to get a glimpse of how rich Zacchaeus really was. I would go as far as saying he was probably the richest Jewish man in the area. I would go that far. Not only was he rich, he knew politics. He knew how to play the game. He knew how to work the system. By being able to be the chief among all of them meant he knew what to do. So he was probably one of the most powerful Jewish men in the area as well. But he was short. Did that play a part into it? He was unimpressive. He'd probably grown up his whole life being made fun of. And this was an opportunity for him to prove how impressive he really was. He says, if you won't give me your respect, I will make you pay. It's kind of the mentality I kind of see him doing. You're going to respect me one way or another because I've worked hard to get to this level. But the people, the Jewish people, would have saw him as a traitor and outcast. He had turned his back on his own people for his own selfish desires. He would have had to accept that role. When he took employment from Rome and a government position, there are risks that are taken. There's a perception that goes about with that, and he was willing to do that. He knew not everybody was going to like him, and that's how it was. I think the problem was not everybody liked him. I don't think anybody liked him. I think he was lonely. Then he had the physical aspect of it. Now, I'm not considered short, but I know some short people, and they tell me how hard it is. I was listening at the 8 o'clock service. I had a lady come up to me, and she was telling me how the other day she was sitting on the restaurant and her feet didn't touch the floor, and how it can be humbling. I've never experienced that, but I can imagine that's something you have to overcome. We all have a physical feature in our lives that we've had to overcome. With Zacchaeus, it was a shortness, so he was a short man, no authority, nobody respected him. They probably pushed him aside. I can imagine the short jokes that went on, but here he is. But he gained wealth. But then we look at verse 3. It says, he, Zacchaeus, wanted to see who Jesus was. Why? Why would this wealthy, powerful man who had everything he ever needed, everything he ever desired, want to see Jesus? This carpenter from up north, this somebody that's teaching different things. Why? What would draw him to the fact that he had to get a glimpse of Jesus? Not have a conversation, not go to coffee with him, not have a meal with him, but just to see who he was. Well, partly because I think, one, he was unhappy. He had this unrest he couldn't fulfill. He couldn't find the peace that was there. He was fully broken and he was searching for something. And I'm sure he heard the story that happened last week of Jesus coming right outside of town of Jericho and healing a blind man. A man was by the street. He was in poverty and he yells out to Jesus and says, Jesus, heal me, give me sight. And Jesus heals him because of his faith. His faith restored his sight. His faith made him well. Or maybe he heard the story from his employees about the rich man. I can imagine the grumblings and the gossip that came in that week into his office. Go, did you hear about this Jesus guy? This lawyer came to him and questioned him, and Jesus kind of just confronted him and told him that it was no rich man could enter the kingdom of heaven. Can you believe this nonsense? I think hearing about people being healed, the broken being restored, having this big crowd follow him around, piqued his interest. Piqued it to the place where he wanted to see him, and he was risking to look like a curious adolescent to the people. So he ran ahead. That's the first thing we look at to get ahead. He ran. Now he's a wealthy man. Wealthy men don't run in the Bible. We hear of one other story where it says that when it's the parable of the lost son, Jesus said this. He said that there was a man and he had two sons, and the oldest son and one of the sons wanted to go and live his own life, so he left, squandered all of his wealth, and the father every day got on the front porch, got on the front step, and would look to see this lost son come home. And it said when he saw the lost son come, the man ran, this wealthy man ran to his son. And Jesus' illustration to say that he was wealth, meaning that rich men didn't run back then. Because you spent a lot of money on your clothes. You had this nice robe that made you look dignified. And if you ran, that means you'd have to pull up your robe and run. That's not dignified. That's childish. Or you may get it dirty. And if you get it dirty, you can't wear it again, and then it's a waste of money. You need to keep it as clean as you want it. You didn't run. Children run. Grown men don't run. Especially when you have wealth and servants, you get servants to run for you. So here is Zacchaeus running to get ahead. Now, why did he run around the crowd? Why didn't he pay his way through the crowd? Surely he could have used his power to bust through a crowd. Well, I thought he saw that as the most dangerous position of all. Because as a crowd, if that didn't like him, that would have been a great way to take a cheap shot. That would have been a great way to say, I didn't see you, and bump into him, knock him on the ground, not let him through. Or he could have used his power and said, I'll tax you even more if you don't let me through. Or if you give me this front seat, I'll give you a break in taxes. He could have done that, but he didn't want to be seen. He didn't want to make a commotion. He ran around. He humbled himself. He took away this perception and ran to a tree. Now, you're going to see a picture of a tree as what they call as the Zacchaeus tree. Bob Berry went to Israel a couple of years ago, and he took this picture. And I've heard many people tell me that this story isn't real because you can't climb a sycamore tree. Because if you look out your backyard, our sycamore trees are different. Well, we're in America. This is Israel. The trees are different. This is a sycamore fig tree. As you can see, it's a tree that you could easily climb, get ahead, get above the crowd to look. And maybe you would notice, maybe you wouldn't, but you would succeed in climbing a tree. It's a very climbable tree. But only kids climb trees. When we go to Caswell every year, or when I first started coming, we go to Caswell, there's these trees, and it never failed. There were always teenagers climbing the tree. They would try to get as high as they could. Most of them have graduated out, thank goodness. Because when we think of climbing a tree, and the reason kids climb trees is because they're not thinking about the risk involved. As adults, we don't climb a tree. Have you climbed a tree lately? Have you, as an adult? Probably not. Why? Because you're scared of what happens if you fall out of the tree. There's a better chance of you falling and hurting yourself than succeeding in getting in a tree. Which is why we don't. We think about the risk of safety, but Zacchaeus didn't even think about that. He put aside the safety to get a glimpse of Jesus because he needed to be fulfilled. He wanted to find peace. He probably wanted to be treated like a person. Here's a politician. He's not treated like a human being anymore. He's treated as a thing. He's treated as an agent. He's treated as someone that just carries out what the Roman government wants to do, and he's hated by the people. When he goes and collects the money, they don't treat him like a person. They treat him like a worker. Some of them probably treated him like a dog because in that time, like I said, they felt like he had betrayed their own kind. Scuffed their nose up at him, made snide comments, which gets us to the next part in the crowd. We have the crowd, and they're in a religious area, they're in Jericho, so there would have been a mixture, but a majority of them would have had a religious background. There would have been religious leaders there, Pharisees, Sadducees. There'd have been church folk there. And what they saw when they looked at Zacchaeus or in that area, knowing his station was there, they would have seen him as, one scholar wrote, an agent of tyranny. Because here's a Roman government. It's about just taking an oppression, and he's their agent. And when Jesus comes by and decides to go to his house and calls him by name, they wouldn't understand this love. Because let's look. In verse 7, all the people saw this and began to mutter, "He is gone to be the guest of a sinner." Now it says the crowd was muttering. A crowd wouldn't gossip. You get people together, they don't mutter and complain and gossip. They don't do that. No, that would not have happened. They didn't have Facebook back then. There's no way they could have shared their opinions to each other. Of course they did, because that's what we do. We love to talk about people. We love to talk about issues. We love to argue, especially when we find someone that we can argue with and we don't have to see them face to face. We like to throw rocks at people that we don't understand and not have any consequences about it. And this is a perfect opportunity for them, because they have this little man that's been abusing them in their eyes, and now they can make all the jokes they want. He can't do anything to hurt them. And I'm sure they did. I'm sure they were looking for this as an opportunity. And I can imagine some of them were praying that he fell out of that tree. And I know that because that's what happens today when I hear of people that are arguing over things. When you dislike someone based on their position instead of finding out who they are. Because we as a crowd, we love to talk about topics. We have topics that are close to our heart and issues that we don't agree with. Humanity issues that need to be solved. Humanity issues that need a solution. But a lot of times we take the humans out of the humanity issues. And we forget that people are truly involved. And that's what Jesus is doing. And that's what they didn't understand, because now their Messiah, this man they had been following for years, the man they have been trying to get a glimpse with, a time where they could just meet. He's always with these 12 guys. Why doesn't he branch off and meet with me? I have been following him for 2.5 years. Why can't we go have a meal together? I have invited him to my house, but he's always busy. Why would he want to do that? But now here he is, this sinner is in the tree, this agent of tyranny is there, and he's going to invite himself to his house? He's going to go eat with them? That doesn't make any sense. There was frustration, there was hatred in the crowd, and they said it out loud. I cannot believe he's going to be the guest of a sinner. See, they were all about judging people. They thought they knew who Zacchaeus was. They thought they knew what he believed. See, they judged his faith based on his occupation. And as a crowd, they were wrong in that. As a crowd, we are wrong on that. We should not judge someone on their faith. It's not our right. It's not our right to question their faith. We look at their fruit, and we'll get to that in a minute, but that's what this crowd was doing, and it proved them off of who Jesus was. See, they had a picture of Jesus. They thought Jesus was this Messiah that Isaiah talked about, that all the prophets talked about, this Christ figure that would come in politically and change the world, bring it back to the God-ordained rule that he established long ago, where they would just point to God and there would be a new heaven and a new earth, and he would take over the world and get rid of all the evilness and the oppression and the government that's not good to them. That's what they thought Jesus was, but that's not who Jesus is. Jesus is the one who comes and heals the broken. He's the one that comes and loves the unloved. He's the one that sees the outcast and gives them faith and hope and salvation, which is where we're going to look at next. The last character of the story is Jesus himself. We see Jesus, the characteristics we find from the story is Jesus sees the hidden. Jesus frees from all the social pressures that are around him. Jesus brings recognition to the crowd that Zacchaeus is a person just like them. And then Jesus comes to seek and save the lost of the world. It's a fulfillment of Ezekiel, the prophecy in Ezekiel 34. You see, the first thing, Jesus sees the hidden. When he walks up, and it says in verse 5, when Jesus reached the spot, he looked up and said to him, Zacchaeus, called him by name. Not hey you, not man in a tree, not little one, not small guy, not dirty politician, not rich guy. Called him by name. Even though he didn't want his name out there, he wanted to be hidden. God saw the hidden. God sees the hidden in you. God is seeing you here. and he's calling you by name. He called Zacchaeus by name. He wanted to bring him out. He wanted to make him feel like a person again. Because that's what the name does, right? That's why we name our pets. We're bringing a personal quality to our pet by bringing a name upon them. Because it's weird to call your pet, hey dog, come here. That doesn't sound friendly. That doesn't sound nice. But when you call your dog, hey Izzy, come here, it makes it different. This thought just came to me. I was thinking, when's the last time he probably was called by his name? We don't know about a family. We don't know about kids. We don't know. He was known not by being Zacchaeus, but probably by being the chief politician, the rich man. But Jesus saw him for who he was, saw him as Zacchaeus, which is an extreme measure if you think about it. Jesus using extreme measures to show that he's a friend of sinners. In Jewish culture, when you walked into someone's house and you took a meal with them, you were condoning their behavior. You were becoming part of their family. Now, Baptists, we will take any excuse to eat together. We don't have to agree upon anything. You have a food, we're there. We're going to meet, we're going to talk. We may bash each other outside, but but we're going to come eat because we like to eat. But for them, that was a big deal. You walked into someone's house, you shared a meal with them, you were telling the world that you believed what they believed, you condoned what they condoned, and you were part of them. That's what it meant to break bread together. And Jesus did that. That's an extreme measure that he's taken. Jesus got rid of those social norms. He's a religious person. He shouldn't be seen with that kind. That's what the Pharisees were saying. That's what the crowd was saying. That's what the church people were saying. Why is he hanging out with people that don't look like him? Surely he doesn't agree with them. Surely he's not an agent of tyranny. Maybe he's coming involved. No, he's a friend of sinners. He's letting them know that there are real people that need help and love. This next part, when he goes and says, Zacchaeus, come down immediately. I'm going to stay at your house today. He says immediately. Okay, so that means like that moment. There's very little preparation. And this gives me anxiety because it says, so he came down, Zacchaeus came down at once and welcomed him gladly. In other words, Zacchaeus walks down the tree and says, come on to the house. Now, when I first read this and as I was studying, I got a little anxious over this. Because if you came and said, I'm coming to your house today, I would say no. Not gonna happen. I have 2 boys. 85% of the time, my house is a wreck because it doesn't matter how hard you clean and put things together. It's crazy, right, parents? There's no point. You give me a 10-minute notice, and I'm still going to be like, no, let's find a different time. Let's find maybe next week, maybe a week from today. I need a week's time. We got to do some cleaning. I need to prepare. I didn't go to the grocery store. I don't have enough coffee. I would come up with any excuse possible not to have a religious leader, somebody that's dignified, somebody that has a reputation coming to my house for a meal. No. But Zacchaeus said yes. Gladly. With a smile on his face. Not with this, okay, what am I going to do? Where am I going to throw this stuff? It says he just immediately went in the moment, took Jesus, and they went home and they had a meal together. To me, that's one of the most convicting parts because I'm like, I'd have a hard time with that. I have a hard time accepting Jesus because I want to clean up before I accept him. I want to get myself right before he comes and pays a visit with me and fellowships with me. Because he may judge me. He's going to walk in and he's going to think, what kind of housekeeper am I? What kind of father am I? What kind of religious person would I be to have this lifestyle? What is he going to find that I thought that I cleaned up but didn't clean up? And maybe it's taboo. Maybe somebody would not like it. What is he going to find in those moments? How am I going to hide it all? How am I going to hide these toys? How am I going to hide all the electronics? Maybe he's not liking electronics. There's no telling what would have happened. But Jesus does not judge Zacchaeus on this. Jesus sees him as a man that's lost and that needs to be found. Zacchaeus didn't worry about cleaning himself up first. He accepted Jesus and then cleaned up his next thing later, because that's what Jesus does. Jesus brings salvation to your home when you accept it. It says he gets there in verse 9. It says, today salvation has come to this house. He's come to this house. because this man is the son of Abraham. He brought the humanity back into the project. He said to these people, these religious leaders, and said, he is a son of Abraham. He is just like you. You are no different than Zacchaeus. You are broken. You are lost. So quit throwing him to the side. Accept him into your fellowship. It is your fault for not accepting him and leaving him down the lost path. Because he fulfills Ezekiel 34, knowing what kind of commotion this would have caused. I know Pharisees and Sadducees would have been there. The religious leaders would have known there. They knew the Bible upside down, inside out. They would have memorized Scripture. They could have quoted it to you. They could have given it back to you. They have been their whole lives dedicated to Scripture. And so when Jesus says to them, for the Son of Man came to seek and to save what was lost, he's hoping and knowing that they're going to go back to Ezekiel 34. Ezekiel 34 is a prophecy that is given to the people of Israel, because listen to Ezekiel 34, 1 and 2. It says, the word of the Lord came to me. Son of man, prophesy against the shepherds of Israel. Prophesy and say to them. Now, do you think it's coincidence that Jesus used son of man phrase there? No, he didn't. He wanted them to come back to this passage of Ezekiel 34. He wanted them to see, because listen closely to the prophecy. This is what the sovereign Lord says. Woe to the shepherds of Israel who only take care of themselves. Should not shepherds take care of the flock? If you're in this and you're a Christian and you're a believer, guess what? You're the shepherd. Because we're the ministers. Paul reveals that to us later. We are his workmanship. We are the ones that are supposed to be the guiding. And he's hitting at the religious leaders, the church people, the ones that's been studying Scripture, that know Scripture. They're the ones that's supposed to go seek the lost and bring them back to Jesus. But yet they're not doing it. They got caught up in their own selfish desires. Because verse 6 of Ezekiel 34 says this, my sheep wandered over all the mountains and on every high hill. They were scattered over the whole earth, and no one searched or looked for them. You hear the sadness in God's voice there? No one was there to find them. He's looking across all of these people, his chosen people that he poured time into and energy into, and said, go help the outcast. Go help the people that don't look like you, don't act like you, don't think like you. Go help them because they're lost and they need a Savior. And he's telling that to the people, and there's no one there because they've neglected their job. They started looking within themselves and only caring about their own opinions and their own thoughts and how they can prove that they're right and you're wrong. They didn't want conversations. The shepherds didn't want conversations. They just wanted to get what was theirs. Then we move to verse 11. For this is what the sovereign Lord says. I myself will search for my sheep and look after them. The prophecy is that Jesus, God himself, God in human form, will come down and be the illustration to know what it's like to go after the lost. And that's what we pick up here. We pick up Jesus fulfilling this prophecy, leading the religious people and the church people and convicting them to go seek those that feel abandoned, to go seek those that don't have a way, to reach out and teach them what God would want them to know, to show them God's love. So quickly, 4 things this encounter teaches us. The first thing is we need to be seeking Jesus. God was working in Zacchaeus for a while. He took the initiative, heard about him coming, and he went seeking Jesus. We're all seeking Jesus today. If you're looking at me and you're in this room, you've taken the first step. That's telling me there's something about Jesus you want to know more about. You're seeking Jesus. If you're watching this online, you are knowing, you're wanting to seek Jesus. You're wanting to find out what's going on. So you're seeking Jesus in this moment, but are you seeking Jesus every day? When things are good, are you seeing Jesus in it? Or are you only looking for Jesus when things are bad? We got to be seeking Jesus. Not letting obstacles deter us from pursuing this love and grace. You see, there was obstacles in the way of Zacchaeus, but he overwent them. There's always obstacles that keep us from seeing Jesus. Always. Maybe we're in a bad mood. Maybe you had a bad dream. Maybe you had some kind of life experience happen that's distracting you from seeking Jesus. That's why you have to be intentional about looking for him, because he's there. We just let distractions and obstacles cover it up. The second thing we need to do is we need to be more concerned with our own heart instead of the perception of others. Many times we say and we get in a group and we try to cater to the group around us because we don't want to be different. We don't want to act different. We may be judged by that. They may look at us differently. We need to forget about that. You need to seek Jesus how God's calling you and how he's seeking you, which is the next point. But to stay here, don't worry about what others are doing. Focus on your own heart. Too many times I have people come and tell me, especially teenagers, well, you know what so-and-so's doing? Quit worrying about so-and-so and worry about yourself. It's a saying we have in our house. With two boys, you can imagine that happens. And a familiar phrase you're going to hear is worry about yourself. Stop worrying about your neighbor, worry about yourself. Start worrying about what this person's saying on the internet. Worry about what you're putting on the internet. Worry about your own heart. A great place to practice is this very room. This is a room designed for worship. The praise team does a great job every week preparing you and presenting a way for you to worship freely without judgment. This is a judge-free zone. Or is it? See, the way you know that it's a judge-free zone and that you're living and worrying about your own heart is how you worship. Because if you're worshiping looking around, then you're not worshiping with your own heart. You're worried about people around you. This is that childlike faith that we talk about. The greatest way to watch and learn how to worship freely is to watch a kid. In the second service, the one before this, there was a little baby that was sitting to my left. And in the last song, we sing Everywhere We Go. That child was singing everywhere they went. Here's the funny thing is, could you make out what they were singing? No. Could they read the words? No. Did they know the tune? No. Did they care about the music style? No. They were singing. Little baby, freely, openly, didn't care what was around them, didn't care because they were getting louder and more rambunctious and jumping around and flaring their arms around. They didn't care who saw around them. They were enjoying themselves in the moment. The only thing that child cared about was their own heart. But do we do that? Because I know when we come into this place, we have times where we want to worship, but we can't because we're scared to raise our hands in that moment. Because what if they think that I'm now Pentecostal or charismatic? What do they think if I've changed and betrayed my own roots and being traditional? How can I sing to this contemporary song? It's not a hymn. How can I sing to that? Or maybe, how can I sing to the hymn? That's not a contemporary song. It's not on K-Love Radio. How can I worship to these old things? What's going on? It doesn't matter what the style is. It doesn't matter what the arrangement is. If you're worshiping without your heart, without worrying about who's around you, you're going to worship freely. That's the practice for when we leave this room and we go into places that are not designed for that. You'll be comfortable with who you are. And you'll worry about your own heart. And you'll be able to show people that Jesus is seeking them. Because that's the third thing we learned. Jesus is always seeking after us. Just like he sought after Zacchaeus and called him by name, he's calling you by name. He's looking for you to make that commitment. He's looking for you to change and to recognize that he's there because he's seeking you. He's calling you by name, and are you answering them? Because once you pick up that he's seeking you, once you find out that he's following you around, you're going to turn and you're going to commit to following him. You have to recognize that you are broken and need a Savior. We all look for different avenues to fulfill our brokenness, to find peace, and there's no peace except Jesus. He's the only one that can lead us back to his design because he went to the cross. He paid the debt. He became broken for us so that we can be new and we can get back to God. Leaning on him and his sacrifice is why we can get back to the peace that God gave us from the very beginning. And it's because he defeated death. He rose from the grave. 3 days later, he showed that there's hope in Jesus. There's no hope in our material possessions. There's no hope in leaders. There's no hope in our family. There's no hope in this church, but there's hope in Jesus. Always hope in Jesus. And he's constantly seeking out of us. But we've got to surrender to that hope. We've got to surrender to Jesus, which will lead to our fourth thing, which is we have to change our behaviors to reflect the gospel that's changing in our lives, that's changing our lives. 2 Corinthians says, for the old is gone and the new has come. Before God came and gave you, became a new creation. The old is no longer there, which means there's a change in behavior. There's a change in behavior after you accept the grace given to you. It's not the behavior that saves you. Jesus himself saves you. Jesus says salvation is here, meaning it's right here for your grasp, but you have to take it, you have to accept it, and then there has to be a behavior change. That's why Zacchaeus stood up and said, I will give away all of my possessions I'll give half of my possessions to the poor. I will give away 4 times the amount if I've done anything wrong. He's trying to prove to them that he's changing. He didn't do that before he met Jesus. He did that after he met Jesus. So I don't know what's going on in your life. I don't know if you're broken. I don't know the sins that are happening. And maybe you're not coming to Jesus. Maybe there's something to prevent you from that, but you don't need to clean up your own life. Jesus is there ready to accept you as you are. You change your behavior after, and it's going to be a slow process because our sins will catch up to us. We don't get to escape all of the consequences of bad decisions we've made. They're still there, but we have Jesus to help us. That's the good news. That's the gospel in us. We are no longer bound by the sins. We are freed from them. We're freed from the one that took it upon himself to get there. So are you a new creation? Does your behavior fact that it's not your behavior that's going to save you? For grace will save you, but faith without works is dead. There's got to be fruit that shows that you're changing, and that fruit is what's going to attract others. Not telling them that they're wrong. Not telling them that their belief system is wrong. It's by showing them the love and the grace of Jesus. Jesus could have walked into Zacchaeus' life and told him everything he was doing wrong. How his political views were wrong. How his statements he's made are wrong. But he didn't. He walked in, became part of his community, and loved him, and showed him peace that he can only get through him. And that's what we need to learn. So as the band comes up and leads us in a final song, my challenge is for you to take this into account. Where is your own heart? Let's worry there first. Stop thinking about your friends. Start thinking about that lost family member. Stop thinking about the conversation you had and worry about your own heart in this moment. Where's it at? What's God dealing with you? What's God trying to show you in this moment? And deal with that. Forget about the people around you and worship. Maybe that's what God's telling you, is to let go of the perception around you and just freely worship. Because it doesn't matter what you sound like or what it hears. There's something amazing about this room. When we all lift up our voices, no matter what it sounds like, it sounds heavenly. So maybe you need to quit worrying about others. Maybe you need to realize you need to change some behavior. You haven't completely shown the fruit of God working in your life. The altar will be down here if you need to deal with that, work with it. If you need to talk to me, I will be down front. But as we sing this song, come as you are. Don't worry about getting clean before you come to Jesus. He'll do the cleaning. Just come and accept that he's seeking you and he wants you in his life. Let's pray. Father, we love you. We thank you for your mercy, for your grace. We thank you for all you've given us. We thank you for a way of salvation and that you're seeking us and wanting us to be full again. Help us and guide us. In your son's name, amen.
We're glad to have you worship with us online today. If you'd like to learn more about following Jesus, or you'd like more information about Wilkesboro Baptist Church, visit our website, wilkesborobaptist.org, or you can email us, info@wilkesborobaptist.org. Again, thank you for worshiping with us.